Ladies and gentlemen, the Pitt Panthers have lost their final football game of the season, 30-19 to the Duke Blue Devils. They finished 3-9 on the season. I'm Chris Carter. He's Noah Hiles. Noah was there in North Carolina watching the game. But we're not going to do a good, bad, and ugly on this game. We're going to do a good, bad, and ugly on the Pitt football season because that's truly what needs to happen right now. It's less about what happened in this game, though we will talk a little bit about it because it plays into some of the things we're going to talk about. But we have to talk about the status of the Pitt football program. So we're going to do a good, bad, and ugly. In this episode of the good, bad, and ugly on the Pitt football season is brought to you as all season long by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar, you can watch any sporting event on any of the 20 televisions that they have available. You can also try one of their 500 different available beers, 300 of those beers being local beers, 80 of those local beers being available on tap at any point in time. And they switch those out every single week to give you new options every single week. We'll talk more about them later. Noah, we got to talk about the good, bad, and ugly here. I want to hear your good. If there's a good to be had from a 3-9 season for Pitt football, what is yours?
It's good that the season's over. No, but in all seriousness, I think the appropriate term for the defense would be good. Typically, Pat Narduzzi's defenses are more than good. They're well above good. They're borderline great most years. But they were just good this year. And while you could point out to some critically flawed efforts, like allowing 300 plus yards on the ground against Syracuse, or allowing 24 first half points against Cincinnati, or losing to a third string quarterback in Wake Forest, and then again today in Durham. It's worth pointing out that Pitt played 12 games this year, and 11 of those games, its defense played well enough to give it a shot to win the football game. The one exception is, of course, Notre Dame. And even in that game, the Panthers forced 2 turnovers in the first half there. Mm-hmm. They gave their offense a ton of opportunities early on, and nothing came from it. And then turnovers got away, or allowed for that game to get away from Pitt. But I think, Pitt's defense took a step back this whole season. That's going to happen when you don't have Kalijah and Servassier and Eric and Brandon and all the other guys around. But with all of that being said, and while there was no clear superstar on this group, they still had a chance to win most of these games heading into the fourth quarter. And if the offense had been any form of reliable this year, this would be a team that I think would be playing for a bowl.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. So the defense wasn't amazing, but it was by far the best thing this team had to offer as far as each of the 3/3 of the game go. What about you, Chris? What was your good?
My good is something that we saw just sparingly little of, but it's Nate Yarnell, and that I think Pitt may have found their quarterback of the future here. And in fact, you asked Pat Narduzzi about that. And what did he say when you asked about the future of Nate?
No, I don't have the direct quote in front of me right now, but he said, my question was, did Nate show enough in his 2 starts this season for you guys to go into the offseason looking at him as the starting quarterback heading into 2024? And he said yes. So, and he gave a little bit more of an answer on that, and that's something I'll definitely be posting online, and kind of that'll be a big part of my 5 takeaways on the season, which will run at post-gazette.com later today, or actually tomorrow morning. But that actually kind of surprised me, because while I do think Yarnell has looked good, I thought he looked probably the best he's had in all 3 of his starts today, despite the fact that they lost. I don't know. It just surprises me that you want to give that answer and make Veyer feel like he is going to be the backup heading into next year. And it's hard to imagine this program not wanting to see what's at least out there in the market as far as the transfer portal goes, because they've done it the last 2 years, despite having a quarterback that knows its system and has been around, a guy that they recruited. So it's either Yarnell showed him something that he hasn't ever before, or maybe they're learning from their mistakes and saying, "Hey, maybe what we have at home is good enough. We don't need to order takeout. We don't need to
You
go
don't need
out to eat."
McDonald's money.
Yes, like we got food at home. Why don't we just go with what we got? And
I,
I think that would be a good thing
I
in
think
Pitt's case.
that's the thing here. That's why it's my good, is that this will be the first time, if Nate Yarnell, they decide that he is the guy for the future. This will be the first time since Kenny Pickett came back for the 2021 season that Pitt has had the quarterback on its roster that was going to be the starter the next year. I know that's just 2 seasons, but I think that would do something for Pitt. That allows continued chemistry. That allows faith in the guy. That allows a guy who you recruited to be the guy moving forward. And listen, I think Nate Yarnell showed a lot of really good traits. I was impressed by Christian Bayer's arm and his like the arm strength, the athleticism that he showed. But I'm more impressed by Nate Yarnell's ability to read the field, handle pressure in his face, and play well. There are several times in the last 2 games that I could point to and be like, man, that was a smart reading of the field. That he worked his way through his progressions. He understood not only what his offense was doing on that play, but what the defense was doing and how to counter it. That is a key element of playing the quarterback position at any level, and he showed it in the 2 starts that he had this year. I think, to me, that should be a sign that, hey, maybe we should be rocking with that dude for the future. So that's a good thing for Pitt. I'll start with the bad thing for the season, and that is the overall structure of the offense. And this offense dealt with a lot of bumps and bruises all throughout the year. The offensive line never got a chance to really solidify until late in the year, and I do think that they played better in their last couple games. You saw Rodney Hammond breaking forward for a lot of yards against Boston College. I thought that for the most part they held up against Duke. They gave Nate Yarnell several really good pockets throughout the game that showed better communication and pass protection. But still, throughout the year, they ranked either last or next to last in total points scored, yards gained, and rushing yards gained. That's not a Pitt team that can function that way. And I think that's where you have to look at, as where this whole thing came down to. And it begs the question: what is Pat Narduzzi going to do for this upcoming season? Because now you have to look at, what do you do about Frank Cignetti Jr.? Does he return? If he doesn't, who do you get? And you got to get somebody fast, because the transfer portal is turning around quickly. That you're going to need to have a message. When you go talk to both high school recruits and transfer portal guys, and also your guys, about sticking here and not entering the transfer portal, you have to have a clear message as far as what you are going to be. And I think with the playing of Nate Yarnell, the way that he's played this year, you have and the receivers that you have on this roster, you should have an offense that is tailored to throw the ball well, and emphasize those strengths. If Frank Cignetti's not part of that picture, find somebody who can be. But that needs to be the focus, because the offense this year was putrid. What's your bad on the season?
I'll just think decision making. And that goes for a lot of different areas. I think that you could point to decision making as far as personnel. I think you can make the decision making as far as the reluctancy to make changes during the year. Why did it take 5 games for Phil Dracovic to be benched? What in the world did they see in camp that led to Veyer being put ahead of Yarnell on the depth chart? And why did it take this long for Yarnell to get an opportunity when this staff knew more about him than any other quarterback on the roster? Those are weird decisions to me. I personally, I think you could question the decision to not make a change mid-season as far as the coaching staff is concerned. Because when you go from the best offense in the ACC and one of the best offenses in the country to just 2 years later having the worst offense in the ACC, that might be time to get away from your traditional stability approach. As we saw, another team in Pittsburgh did something similar this past week. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and I think better decision-making probably gets this team more than 3 wins. I think that some of the decision-making on the field by the players was poor as far as, where the football went, decisions after the whistle. There were some personal fouls. There were some roughing the passers, just some bad penalties. There's just a lot of poor choices can be easily looked back at this year, and you can point to mental errors in every single loss and say, well, if they didn't do this, they didn't do that, they probably win this game. And that's the mark of a bad football team, when you can say you left a better effort out on the field based off of, your own mistakes. So that would be my bad. And I'm just going to roll it over into my ugly.
Sure.
I think that falls on coaching.
Yeah.
It was a poorly coached season, like I said. And I know that decision making falls on more than just the coaches. Because like I said, the players need to make decisions on what they're going to read as far as reading their keys on defense, where the quarterback throws the football, how the running back follows their blocks. Some of those decisions went poorly. But as far as coaching goes, I mean, there were notable regressions all over the field. All of these guys, there were plenty of players that we were told all spring, all summer, that these guys are going to have a breakout year. And I haven't even said their name in weeks. You know, what happened to Nakai Johnson? What happened to, geez, pick a guy in the receiver room, all those freshmen aside from Kenny Johnson. And really, what happened to Kenny Johnson in the second half of the year? What happened to Rodney Hammond Jr.? What happened with all of these guys? And you just look at certain position groups. This tight end group was supposed to be revolutionary, and it was a non-factor. They went out and they got a 6'6" playmaker with NIL money. They returned a really talented guy in that room, and they were able to get nothing out of that position group. The running back position probably had its worst showing at Pitt in I don't know how long, because even when Pitt's bad, it normally has a good run game. So I'm just trying to think of where Pitt got better from coaching. And aside from the receiver position, I can't really point anywhere else. There was no big development on the defensive line this year. Okunlola showed a little bit of promise. The linebackers, I guess, showed promise simply because so many freshmen played at that spot. The safety position, McMillan came in and did well. I don't know if that's coaching or just him getting an opportunity. And the rest of the secondary kind of did what we expected it to do. But yeah, the whole point of Pitt's program and the stability, it's based on development and the message of these coaches are able to turn these 3 stars into really, really talented players. And that just didn't happen this year.
Yeah, I feel you. That's a big part of it, and that leads right into my ugly, and it's the discipline or the lack of discipline. And it's not just this year; it's now a theme for Pat Narduzzi. It's just that I think the winning kind of covered it up. But the last 2 years before this season, Pitt had the second most penalties in the ACC, and it didn't matter as much because they did so many other things well. They ran the ball well last year. They threw the ball well the year before that. Their defense was aggressive and created turnovers and made big plays. But when you don't do those things, you better be a disciplined football team. And they finished with the most penalties in the ACC this season. That is something that has to change. And that's unless Pat Narduzzi has a lot of first round picks coming up that are on this roster or are coming in the transfer portal. They're not. They need to be a much more disciplined football team to not hurt themselves in a lot of their contests. Because if they don't hurt themselves, I think they win this game on Saturday against Duke. They had some terrible penalties. There were at least 2 Sam Okunlola personal foul penalties that extended field goal drives. Same thing for AJ Woods on a field goal drive. You had penalties that cost you different parts of that game. You could look back to the Wake Forest game, the Syracuse. Actually Syracuse they were clean. They were a lot cleaner on, but several times this year where you pointed to the penalties and they were just crushing, and sometimes at really crushing moments. So to me, it's got to be the discipline has to be better, the coaching has to be better. I think this team has talent on it. I think that there's guys like Ryan Baer. I think we started to see a little bit of Sean Fitzsimmons late in the year. I think that he started to show some promise on the defensive front. And I think there's other guys that if they stick around, guys like Bub Means, guys like Konate Mumfield, I think there's potential there on this team for them to be playmakers and to go out there and to have a better season next year. But you need to have an approach that they believe in for them to stick around. You need to have an approach that puts them in better positions to win so that their talent is winning the football games and less about the mistakes and the sloppiness of the games that cost them those moments. And all those things are things that Pat Narduzzi needs to focus on right now, this very moment, not wasting any time. It's all about getting this program together and saying, hey, this is our focus for 2024. Nate Yarnell's our quarterback. Let's rock. And let's find the people who want to rock with us and get ready to go out and show that 2023 was a bump in the road, not a sign that all things are regressing in the Pitt football program. That's what has to happen this year, and discipline has to be a part of it.
Don't cry because it happened. Smile because it's over. Yes. A wise Post-Gazette Pitt beat reporter told me a couple minutes before we hit the record button. I was going to say, it was, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was a miserable season. It was a miserable season for the fans. It was a miserable season for the players, and it was not fun to cover either. I think it's safe to say we both felt how everyone else was feeling.
Yep.
Numerous times this year, especially Notre Dame. But yeah, it was just a rough year altogether. Something that I'm pretty sure everyone around it is happy that it's over. But the reality is the more important thing to come from Pitt football in 2023 starts now.
Yep.
Because these decisions that Pat Narduzzi and Heather Like make, as far as staff construction, as far as what they want to do in the transfer portal, where they want to send their resources, and what the staff's able to do as far as maintaining its recruitment class, which still ranks number 31 in the country. These are big things. And they're going to play a big role in determining, like what you said, Chris, if this is just a bump in the road or if this is a program-altering season. So that's my final thought. If you want to add anything before wrapping it up.
All I'm going to say is when I made that comment, Noah, about the don't cry because it happened, smile because it's over. I don't say that to make fun of Pitt football, because you know what, we like covering these guys.
Yes.
We've had a great we have a great relationship with a lot of guys on this team. Noah's done a show with guys on this team all season long. We want to be covering winning football teams. Like, we don't want to be covering depression and sadness and some of the things that went on this year, because it was a disappointing season. You think we don't want to travel to a big bowl game at the end of the year? We want to see that. But in all seriousness, and I said this weeks ago on this show, I think the biggest thing that Pitt needed was the season to end without anything worse happening. And now that it's over, you can finally stop having, bad quotes or things being talked about in the media. You can stop having people speculating. You can just get to, all right, now we can do the things to change, because it didn't matter if Pitt won its last 3 games. That's great and all, still wouldn't have been bowl eligible, and people would have looked at this season as a disappointment. But now you can start all the work you need to straighten it out next year. And that's why Pitt fans should smile, is that, okay, stop worrying about that. One, you can look to a really good basketball team that we'll be talking about really, really shortly here, because they're going to be back in action. But 2, this football program, I think, has a lot of talent on it, and there's resources to find answers much sooner than people think. I think some people think this is, the whole program's thrown away, Pat Narduzzi should be gone. I think that's a very harsh overreaction. And if there's one thing that Heather Like has shown, she has patience to make sure that a coach has time to figure their program out. You see the results with Jeff Capel now, and how you're seeing success and fun and excitement and culture in a Pitt basketball program that stunk for years when he first took it over and trying to fix it from Kevin Stallings. Pat Narduzzi just had 20 wins in 2 seasons, won an ACC championship, won a Sun Bowl, and brought all sorts of promise and sending back-to-back first-round picks into the NFL in consecutive years. Those are all good things. This 1 year does not cancel those things out. You give him the time, the resources to fix this. If he does it next year, then we talk about hot seat stuff. But 1 bad year should not change all of that. That's where I'm at. Noah, it's been great doing the football season with you. We'll keep you covered all basketball season long. And hey, volleyball is gearing up for the tournament as well. Pitt volleyball won their share of the ACC regular season crown. Now they're getting ready to make a march for the national championship. Abby Schnabel's got you covered there all throughout that run. Noah, thanks for being a great partner. You all, thanks for being a great audience as you've been with us all year. Reminder, this show as always is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar. Thank you all, Mike Beer Bar, for being a great sponsor, where you have over 500 different available beers, 300 of those beers being local, 80 of those local beers being available on tap. And you can catch all your sports action there with over 20 televisions and great food options like the Steak on a Stone, where every time you get a cut, your choice cut of steak, you cut a piece off, press it on that stone. You can choose how well you want done every single bite. Go to Mike's Beer Bar today, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you get there, tell them that Chris and Noah sent you. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you soon right here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's podcast channel. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.